Okay, continuing to go through comments here. Icon5892 says, thank you. Thank you for commenting, Icon. Thanks for commenting on the video. Hope things are going well with you. So LA Kane fan 1571 says, so how do you make chunk payments with first lien? So he's commenting on my first lien HELOC video. The first lien HELOC really takes the second lien HELOC strategy or the velocity banking strategy to its logical conclusion. So when you say chunk payments, I'm not sure what you mean by that. When you have a first lien HELOC on your house, you can pay down the principal in chunks. You can pay down the principal any way that you want. Okay. But I think what you're referring to is a strategy that is outdated if you have a first lien HELOC. So what you're thinking about is if you have a standard second position HELOC. So let's say you have your mortgage. Let's say you have a $250,000 mortgage and you have a $50,000 second position HELOC on top of that. You can then use that second position to HELOC to make a $50,000 chunk payment to your mortgage and then keep making just the minimum payments on the mortgage and then pay down that second position HELOC as fast as you can. But the first lien HELOC, that's no longer necessary because we've now taken that strategy to its logical conclusion. So instead of having a $250,000 mortgage with a $50,000 second position HELOC on top, we've replaced our mortgage with a first lien HELOC. And now we have a $250,000 balance on our first lien HELOC. And we're now running our income through that first lien HELOC. So when you say chunk payments, I think you're misunderstanding this, thinking it's a second position HELOC. It's not, it's a first lien HELOC. No chunk payments are necessary. The payments, quote unquote, will happen behind the scenes because you're going to be running your entire cash flow through this first lien HELOC. All of your liquid savings and all of your cash flow is going to go through your HELOC. And so your principal balance on your home equity is going to come down naturally. So I hope that answered your question. When you say chunk payments, it depends what you mean by that, right? In the most generic sense of that word, you can make chunk payments to a first lien HELOC the same way you would do anything else. But if you're using the first lien HELOC the way it's meant, which is to do velocity banking, you won't consciously be making any payments. You'll just be using this new checking account the same way you use every other checking account, and it all happens behind the scenes. Okay, Icon5892 says, do you have a video on first lien HELOC being used in conjunction with infinity banking strategies? Yeah, I think you mean infinite banking. Yep, this was 7 months ago, so yes, I do have a couple on that now. That's something I'll probably explore further. I have a playlist on what's known as infinite velocity, which is combining infinite banking and velocity banking. Yeah, I have that now. I didn't at the time. Icon5892 comments. Thank you. Of course, you're welcome. I'll keep putting out the content. Let me know how things are going with you in terms of your first lien HELOC or infinite banking or whatever you're doing. Okay, Ian Vogel Media comments on our Answering Objections to the Infinite Banking series. He says, props for doing your due diligence and reaching out and trying to set up a public discussion with the guy. Keep calling out the nonsense. That's all we can do. It's never a good look when someone deletes your comments on an article posted in a public space. That's equivalent to censorship, in my opinion, as long as the comments weren't abusive, which I highly doubt they were, considering how you guys are quite respectful in your disagreement. Thanks, Ian. I appreciate it. Ian Vogel is a life insurance agent. He works with Chris Kirkpatrick's agency, Life 180. I've spoken with Ian a couple times, so thanks for commenting, Ian. Really appreciate it. So this was in the context of this guy, the wealthy accountant is what he calls himself. He posted an article, basically it was a hit piece on infinite banking, and he included video of Chris Kirkpatrick in there as well. And so Peter and I went through and refuted his article point by point, and I did the same thing in a video series with Chris Kirkpatrick as well. It's all in this playlist, Infinite Banking Concept, Answering Objections. And we invited the guy, Keith, that's his name, the wealthy accountant, to a public discussion, and he, of course, declined. So after publicly criticizing the infinite banking concept and criticizing Chris Kirkpatrick, he declined any sort of public discussion with me or Chris or anyone else. and he deleted the comments that I had added to his article showing people, hey, we've responded to this. Yeah, it is what it is. But thanks for commenting, Ian. I appreciate it. Okay, YouTubing comments and says, great video. How many people do you know that have successfully done this? Also, what if you figure paying that same extra 3K on the amortized model? Okay, so this is in response to my first lien HELOC video. So in terms of how many people that have successfully done this, I know quite a few, and there you can go online and see the actual results. When the first lien HELOC people say pay off your house in 5 to 7 years, that's not just a marketing term, that's actual lived experience, right? People, that's typically what we're seeing is people are paying off their houses in 5 to 7 years. And then of course there are more advanced strategies too. So when you say successfully done this depends on what your goal is, right? Some people, their goal is to pay off their house. And what we're seeing is people are paying off their houses much faster and with a lot more safety, control, and liquidity. But some people, their goal is not to pay off their house. What they're doing is they're using the first lien HELOC to strategically pay down their house and then strategically pull that equity again to go and make a strategic investment, say buying a rental property if they're real estate investors. I've interviewed at least one real estate investor, Greg Fariselli, and others who do that with their primary residence. And then some people will also purchase whole life policies as well. So it depends on what your goal is. That's the beauty of velocity banking. It can be used for multiple things. For some people, they're not just paying off their house, they're paying off a lot of other debts too. So they're able to now refinance a lot of other more toxic debts or debts that are taking up more cash flow into the first lien HELOC and pay off not just their house, but really all of their debts. And then you say, what if you figure paying that same extra 3K on the amortized model? That's another comparison that a lot of people have done, saying, okay, what if we apply that same cash flow to an amortized mortgage? Okay. So you're saying an extra 3,000. So instead of directing your cash flow to the first lien HELOC, direct that extra free cash flow to an amortized mortgage. And I would just grant, for the sake of argument, that can work for sure. Make an extra principal payments on a mortgage. I would even grant, for the sake of argument, that if the interest rate is low enough, you could pay off the mortgage faster. Here's the problem though. If you do that, you lose access to all those funds. So how much extra principal you can pay on your mortgage is going to be limited because you always need to have some liquidity. You cannot throw every single red cent that you have at your mortgage. And the reason why you cannot do that is because you need cash. You need something to pay the bills, right? And you need some amount of emergency savings. You need something, right? So I would say that's an unrealistic comparison, is my response. You can certainly make extra principal payments on a mortgage, but you cannot throw all of your income at the mortgage. You cannot do that. With the first lien HELOC, you can safely do that because a HELOC is a two-way street. So all the money you throw in, you can pull back out. So I would just grant, for the sake of argument, yeah, you could make extra principal payments on a mortgage. And if in theory you could throw the same amount of cash flow to a mortgage as you could to a first lien HELOC, maybe you would pay it off faster depending on how the interest rates compare. So I would say you can make that comparison, but it's kind of an unfair comparison, right? Because it's not realistic. But some people have done that. I have not done it on my channel, I don't think. Really, infinite banking is my focus more than velocity banking. I view velocity banking as an excellent complementary strategy, but it's not something that I specialize in as much. So my time would probably be better spent elsewhere. But yeah, plenty of people have made those comparisons to show you how it works. Okay. Now here we have Thomas. So I'm not going to respond to this in this video because this guy, Thomas2345, we did a whole series of video responses to him. So he made a lot of comments. Thank you for commenting, Thomas. And he was giving his objections to velocity banking. And I thought, in fairness to Thomas, he put a lot of thought into it. And we had a good conversation, good back and forth. And we responded to, I believe, all of his comments in that video. So Thomas provided us with some good materials, some good objections to answer. So thank you for commenting, Thomas. I'm not going to address it here again because I answered all of his comments in the comment section and also in the video as well. So Thomas, thank you for commenting. I'm just going to skip through this. You'll see he commented quite a lot, which I appreciate. Thank you. We had a nice comment, nice back and forth, myself and DeAndre. And you notice when I answer velocity banking objections, I'm typically bringing on someone like DeAndre Clayton, who really I feel knows velocity banking better than me. Okay, Flawless Eyewear 3692 says, "Great video. Where can I get that Excel spreadsheet? Thanks." So I believe he's referring to the first lien HELOC Excel spreadsheet. Yeah, I cannot publicly share that spreadsheet with you. It's for ambassadors only. And yeah, you always have to be very careful about sharing stuff like that, especially when there's a bank involved, which there is in this case, right? So for compliance reasons, for just general being financially responsible reasons, I cannot share that spreadsheet publicly. But if you want to see what your numbers, what your scenario looks like, you can schedule time with me and we can go through it. Thank you for commenting. Okay. SIUL and aid. I'm not sure how to pronounce that. Can I see the video series you produced? Oh, you have none? Okay. Then I bashed him 15 years before I started selling. Leave the Kool-Aid cup at the front desk on your way out. So this is in response to our Dave Ramsey video. We did a response to Dave Ramsey. So Dave Ramsey, of course, has. So first of all, I like Dave Ramsey. I've got a lot of respect for him. I think he's very genuine. I know people who personally have benefited from his strategies, and I think he is phenomenal at getting people out of debt. So I have personal friends of mine who benefited from his system. However, when it comes to other things outside of his area of expertise, like whole life insurance and the infinite banking concept, obviously, I disagree with Dave Ramsey. Dave Ramsey takes a very negative view of whole life insurance. He takes a very negative view of the infinite banking concept. And from what I can tell, he doesn't really distinguish between those two. I think he believes the infinite banking concept is just a marketing term to refer to whole life insurance or another sales pitch for whole life insurance, which it really isn't. It's its own thing. It does use whole life insurance, but it's really about understanding the banking function. Yeah, when you say, "Can I see the video series you produced?" I'm not sure what. I guess that's intended to insult me because I don't have a video series. I mean, I do have YouTube videos. Then I bashed him 15 years before I started selling. I'm not sure what that's supposed to mean. Leave the Kool-Aid cup at the front desk on your way out. Okay, I'll do that. Thank you. And then he says, and I replied, said, "Thanks." I said, "Thanks for your reply and engagement." I think it was meant as a reply to the unit. And he says, "You got it. I've listened to 70% of your content and recommended it to fellow industry members as must listen material." Okay, so I'm sorry. He was actually positive on me. He's actually I guess he's attacking one of the other persons who's attacking me. Yeah. This is the this is the problem of going through this in chronological order because this stuff is so in the past I can't remember and I cannot see the context here. So he's actually responding to somebody else. He's not attacking me. He's attacking somebody else who was attacking me. Yeah, okay. So he's saying, "I have listened to 70% of your content and recommended it to fellow industry members as must listen material. Love the deep dives. Thanks for your efforts. They are much appreciated." Well, thank you. I appreciate that. Okay. And here we go again. He commented again. He said, "And how did Dave make his millions? He made the money selling information about how to get out of debt, not from investing, but by teaching and courses. Then he started investing all those funds into several things. Then he made a return on those investments. The bulk of his net worth is not from returns, but his original money. No different than a chain supermarket owner or a toilet cleaner franchise owner. I have no respect for his investment advice, more respect for his marketing abilities. Lose your job and have a $1,000 emergency fund? Good luck. Pay off debt in full and go on a high wire act with no net because you want to be debt free? Okay, good luck with that. If you get disabled short term, go to the grocery store and scream, 'I'm debt free.' I don't have cash to pay, but I did what Dave said. No groceries for you." Dave says he went bankrupt when he was an over leveraged real estate guy. I have a theory that an agent sold him a poorly designed $1 million whole life policy that he couldn't pay, or a universal flex market investment deal, and that's why he hates the product. And his over-leverage history shows he is highly emotional and extreme risk taker, advising people he doesn't know after a 1-minute conversation on a radio show. Yeah, that's not risky at all. Right. Okay, well, thank you for commenting. I'm not sure SIUL and 8 and 8. I'm sorry, I don't know. I'm guessing IUL is in there somewhere. That's the only thing I can tell in terms of how to pronounce your screen name. So I'm sorry, I apologize for that. But yeah, there's a lot to respond to there, but it's not really relevant to me. He's talking more about Dave Ramsey, and Dave Ramsey, I agree, he didn't make his money by investing in mutual funds or retirement accounts. He got rich because he became an entrepreneur doing something that he's passionate about. Like you said, he's phenomenal with marketing. That's why he's been successful. He's really good with marketing. I wish I was good at marketing. I'd be doing a lot. I'd have a lot more money if I was good at marketing. And then he points out too that some of the advice that Dave gives doesn't give people much savings to fall back on. And I agree that's a problem. However, I understand why Dave Ramsey makes that recommendation because he's talking to people who are really struggling with debt and who really don't have a lot of financial discipline. So for those people, if they had a lot of money in cash, they would probably just be too tempted to spend it. So for those people, for the people he's talking to, I actually understand why he makes that recommendation. For someone who's financially disciplined, having a $50,000 emergency fund is probably a good thing. They're not going to be tempted to just spend it. But for someone who's drowning in debt, I can understand it. Again, that's why he calls them baby steps, right? They're baby steps. They're not intended to be like super advanced strategies for people who have a lot of financial discipline. So that's an interesting theory that maybe he had a whole life policy that he surrendered, or he had a universal life policy that blew up on him, and that's why he hates the product. Maybe. I don't know. I don't know. Yeah. Thanks for commenting. I appreciate it. Okay. Redman 2751 commenting on my first lien HELOC Velocity Banking Answering Objection series says, Velocity Banking is a scam. It's just complicated enough to lose the common person not willing to do the math. In some situations, it may be slightly faster to pay off debt than just paying more each month, but just barely. For example, you may pay off a house or car 1 month faster. Some scenarios, it's actually slower. If you want to pay off debt, just pay off your debts as fast as you can by putting all of your available cash towards the debts. That's all you have to do. No need to do velocity banking. Thanks for your comment, Redman. Again, I can grant that in theory. Sure, if you want to pay off your debts, you could just put all of your available cash towards the debts. That's true. You could do that. But do you really think that's a good idea? Do you really think it's a good idea to put all of your cash towards the debt so you have no savings, no emergency fund, no liquidity? What if life happens? You're going to have to now turn right back around and go back into debt again. When you do velocity banking with a first lien HELOC, the advantage is you can pay off the debts and not lose the liquidity. That's one of the key points that I think you're missing because it is about debt payoff partially, but this is where they think velocity banking equals debt payoff. No, velocity banking is bigger. It's broader than that. It's about cash flow efficiency. If you throw all of your cash towards your debt, the problem is you lose all that cash. Whereas if you flow your cash flow through your first lien HELOC and you use that first lien HELOC to pay off your debts, you didn't lose the liquidity because you still have that liquidity available to you in the first lien HELOC, right? So it's about cash flow efficiency. And you can now take your savings and safely throw it towards the debt because let's say you have $10,000 in savings, you can dump that $10,000, chunk it into your HELOC because you still have access to that $10,000 in your HELOC. A HELOC is a two-way street, right? And then we had a bit of an exchange here. He says, the only thing I've seen people use velocity banking for is for paying off debt. Do you talk about those other uses in this video? Yeah, not really. I'm not. Velocity banking is a complementary strategy. I talk about it, but it's not really the focus of my business or my channel. Infinite banking is really the focus of my channel. I try not to get too deep into velocity banking. There are other guys who go way deeper than I do. And when we do, I typically bring on someone like DeAndre who really does it more than I do. So I like velocity banking. I'm an ambassador for the first lien HELOC program. I think it's great and it has its uses, but I don't go super deep. Infinite banking is really more my specialty. Okay. So, yeah, sure, in theory, you can put all your available cash towards the debts. I still think that'll be less efficient than using velocity banking, but more importantly, it's a lot less safe because then you lose the liquidity. That's the problem, right? That's the problem. Okay, and confused who we respond to, he said you would use velocity banking to accomplish what? Show an example with numbers. Yeah. Yeah, I have done that, but it's not really the focus of my channel. Maybe some of the other velocity banking promoters, the primary ones, the good ones, have actually done something like that. So I've shown a combination of velocity banking and infinite banking. But again, for me, it's just not really a focus of my channel, not something I want to go super deep into. For me, it's a complementary strategy. I like it. I will try to correct some misconceptions about it, but I'm not going to go super deep into it. Okay, so Daryl Newman then responds to Mr. Confused and says, it's very simple. On a typical mortgage, all the interest is front loaded. Therefore, you're going to pay for that house 3 times over by the end of a 30-year mortgage. If you're aggressive and you make extra payments, maybe double. The first position HELOC eliminates that, and if you pay off aggressively over 5, 6, 7 years, and if you can exercise discipline without wasting money because you will have easy access to your equity, you can pay your house off with less than a quarter of that interest. So, to be clear, you can pay for your house 3 times or pay off your house in 4 or 5 or 6 or 7 years while not paying for 2 extra houses. It's pretty simple. Thanks, Daryl, for your comment. I appreciate that. Yeah, so that again, I don't want to go too deep into it, but he's pointing out that the interest in an amortized mortgage is front loaded, right? When you make those early payments in the first 5 to 7 years of your mortgage, most of your payments are going towards interest, not principal. And most people spend most of their lives in the early years of their mortgage because they end up refinancing their mortgage every few years or they end up moving to a new house or what have you. So that's where the amortization schedule comes in. And again, I don't want to get too deep into it, but Daryl, thank you for your comment. I appreciate it. Okay. Donald Richer, 8815, comments, if one has a HELOC and the housing market crashes and bank freezes your line, then what? You can't draw from it and you still must pay the monthly payment. Thoughts? Thank you, Donald. I appreciate this. He said something similar and I answered it in another video. But yeah, again, if the bank freezes your HELOC, that means your HELOC now operates exactly like a mortgage, where you have a required payment coming in and you cannot pull anything out. So if the bank freezing your HELOC is something you're concerned about, then you should be even more scared of a mortgage because a mortgage, that's the way it operates by default. So the bank could, in theory, freeze your HELOC. As far as I know, banks have not frozen first lien HELOCs because remember, this is a first lien HELOC we're talking about. They have frozen second position HELOCs. So definitely in the 2008 financial crash, they did freeze second position HELOCs. But that doesn't mean they're not calling the loan. That's an important distinction to make. Some people get scared over this. The bank cannot call the loan. So if you owe $50,000 on your HELOC, the bank cannot say, pay us $50,000 or we're foreclosing on you. The bank cannot do that. What they can do is they can say, we're freezing your HELOC, which just means you cannot draw anything more out of your HELOC. But as long as you stay current, as long as you're still making the required payments, that's all they can do. That's all they can do. And again, with a first lien HELOC, the bank is in first position. So it's safer for the bank. So historically, first lien HELOCs have not been frozen, even in the worst financial, even in the financial crisis of 2008. They did not freeze or even reduce those HELOCs. But in fairness, it is possible the bank could freeze your first lien HELOC. That is possible. And I would just say, okay, as compared to what? Like compare that to other options. And more importantly, back up a step and ask yourself, okay, why would they freeze the HELOC? So if the housing market crashes, think about all the other things that are going on and ask yourself, did the first lien HELOC put you in a worse position or in a better position? And is the problem your first lien HELOC or is the problem something else? But you're correct. The bank could freeze your HELOC. You're correct. You're working with a bank. The bank has recourse. They could freeze your HELOC. And of course, in the worst case, they could foreclose on you if you just didn't make any payments, not even the interest payments. They could foreclose on you. Okay. Icon5892 comments and says, in a traditional loan, your house just lost half its value and you're contracted to continue to pay regardless of its value because you signed on the dotted line. With HELOC, yes, your loan will be adjusted, but you will still be able to have access to your equity and pay the house off in record time. The question is a valid question, but the truth is, what difference does make? You have no control. You still need to pay exactly the same either way. I had a 15-year at 1.75% interest. Wow, that's amazing. Which is the lowest interest rate in history that I know. Yeah, that's the lowest I've ever heard of. Wow. I closed on a first lien with 7.75%. Not only will I pay my house off in 5 years, I also save 75% in interest without changing any of my spending habits. The man that came over with the papers for me to sign to close on my house had a weird look on his face as he was giving me papers to sign. In his 15 years, he has never closed on a first lien HELOC. He was hired by the bank I used that only does first lien HELOCs. That confirmed that many people have no idea about this type of loan. The truth is, we have been programmed and told only about a traditional loan. Why? Because banks make 100% on a 3% loan. Why would they ever want you to learn about a first lien that can help speed up your financial freedom? Thanks for that comment, Icon. I appreciate it. So, yeah, he said a lot there. It's interesting. But yeah, appreciate the comment. I don't really have much to add to what you said. Thank you. Okay, and then we had a bit of an exchange. Icon5892 comments again and says, the bank I used was First Saving Bank. They only do first lien HELOCs. I was first skeptical like most people. I did a Zoom call with DeAndre and went over the numbers. I asked all the questions, the good and the bad, and said this loan is for me. I have tried to convince many people about this loan, and for some odd reason, it doesn't resonate with them. Yeah, how about that, Icon? How about that? That's the story of my life, right? Infinite banking, velocity banking, anything that is, I'm just telling you, man, anything that is not conventional wisdom, there's just a block. I don't understand it. I really don't get it, but there's just a block. People just won't, they will not go against conventional wisdom. It's really, really hard to convince people to do something that is not conventional wisdom. I don't know why, but it really doesn't matter how much reason or logic you use. It really doesn't matter. Then he says, most people say, well, why isn't everyone doing this? I believe most don't know about it or they don't understand it. Yeah. Why isn't everyone doing this? That's a question. Okay. Is everyone becoming millionaires? Is everyone getting super wealthy? Is everyone getting financially independent? So if everyone is not getting financially independent, which we clearly see, then why would you want to do what everyone else is doing? Why is that even a question? Why isn't everyone doing this? Why isn't everyone getting independently wealthy? Why would you want to follow the herd? I don't understand. A more fair question would be, are the rich people doing this? But even then, I don't care what other people are doing. I care what's going to work best for me. That's all I care about. That's all I care about. Why would I care what other people are doing? I don't understand. I don't understand. Okay, so then Confused did respond and say, Icon 5892, the weird look on the guy's face was confusion on why someone would borrow money at 7.75% to pay down a 1.75% loan. Yeah, probably. That's maybe because they don't understand how interest actually works, because the interest rate is important. I'm not saying it's irrelevant. Don't put words in my mouth. I didn't say the interest rate doesn't matter. But what ultimately matters is not the interest rate, but how much interest you actually end up paying. So what interest rate am I being charged on my credit cards? I honestly couldn't tell you. I'm sure it's high, double digits. But I know how much interest I'm actually paying, and that's zero because I'm paying off my credit cards every month. So again, what matters is not the interest rate per se, but how much interest are you actually paying at the end of the day? That's what ultimately matters. Okay, I think that's it for this video. We'll continue responding to more comments. Thanks everyone for your comment. Keep up with the engagement. Talk soon. Bye-bye.